Centuries had passed since Earth vanished from the stars. In the early days of galactic expansion, humanity had played a bold role, spreading fast across nearby systems and making contact with dozens of species. But then, just as quickly as they had risen, they went silent. No signals, no colonies, no trade. Entire planets once ruled by humans were found empty or abandoned, as if they had simply vanished overnight. Over time, Earth became a distant memory, more legend than reality, told in stories about the ancient species that once walked among the stars. The Galactic Concord, a council formed by hundreds of intelligent civilizations, eventually removed Earth from its records. For most, it was easier to believe they were gone forever. But now, strange things were happening. In the far reaches of explored space near the edge of the Sagittarius Arm, deep space outposts were reporting sightings. Ships no one could identify, constructed from materials that didn't match any known source. Ships that moved without propulsion, gliding silently past scanners. They did not speak, did not fire, and left as quickly as they arrived. Yet wherever they passed, nothing remained hidden. Communications broke for moments, power flickered, and encrypted data mysteriously reorganized itself. The ships were observing, watching, and they were heading inward, straight toward conquered space. Ambassador Takar of the Yalari Confederacy, a long-lived and cautious diplomat, was the first to take the sightings seriously. He studied the images and data captured from outpost sensors and found something impossible. Ancient human script carved subtly into the hulls of these unknown vessels. It was the same writing once used by Earth's old exploration fleets, a language long forgotten by even the best Concord historians. For the first time in generations, fear crept into the chambers of the Galactic Concord. If these ships truly belonged to Earth, then where had they been all this time? And why had they returned now, in silence? A special investigation team was sent to intercept one of the vessels near the system of Varnex 3, a neutral trade hub. The team never returned. Only fragments of their final report were recovered. Visuals of a massive ship, black and silver, triangular in shape with strange, glowing markings pulsing across its surface. It hung in space like a sleeping predator, unmoving yet full of quiet power. The Concord called an emergency session. Some believed Earth had been hiding, building its strength in some forgotten corner of the galaxy. Others feared they were no longer the same species at all. Whispers of war stirred in the dark. But then, without warning, every Concord communication array received the same signal. No encryption, no demand, just a single line in perfect Concord standard, spoken with calm precision. "We have returned." The words spread like wildfire through every system, every council chamber, every ship in deep space. People stopped what they were doing. Fear mixed with curiosity. Earth was no longer a myth. They were real, and they were back. But no one knew what they wanted, or what they had become. The message had been clear, yet it offered no answers. "We have returned." Those words, spoken by the Earthborn, sent waves of panic and curiosity through the Galactic Concord. Every species on the Council had its own opinion, but all agreed on one thing. This return was no small event. Earth, long thought lost, had come back not as a whisper but as a storm. A diplomatic fleet was quickly formed, made up of ships from every major race. Peacekeepers, translators, scientists, and warships just in case. Their destination, Epsilon Tharn, a neutral planet known for peaceful trade and open skies. It was there the Earthborn Armada had come to a halt, a fleet of colossal ships floating silently in high orbit. They did not respond to weapons scans. They ignored hails for hours. But they also didn't attack. When contact was finally made, it came not from the flagship of the Concord, but from the Earthborn themselves. A figure appeared on every major broadcast channel, standing on the bridge of a ship made of light and metal. She was human, but not ordinary. Her eyes glowed faintly with pale blue energy, and her voice carried both calm and power. She introduced herself as Captain Elise Morgan, representing the Terran Unity. Her people had not died. They had not been defeated. They had left the known galaxy behind to evolve, to survive in places where even light feared to travel. She spoke with confidence, but without threat. "We return not as conquerors," she said, "but as watchers. As guardians. The galaxy has grown chaotic. We only seek to help." But her words, though carefully chosen, were not enough to calm the Concord. Their sensors revealed what their minds feared. Earth's ships were beyond understanding. They moved without engines, responded without delay, and their hulls changed shape depending on observation. It was said their artificial intelligences were not programmed but born, learning like children and growing smarter with every passing second. The more the Concord looked, the less they understood. How had Earth come so far while the rest of the galaxy had stayed behind? Why now? And if their power was so great, what kept them from simply taking what they wanted? While council members debated in hidden channels and nervous officers kept their weapons armed but silent, something else was happening. From the edge of the star system, new signals appeared. At first, they seemed like cosmic noise, but then came the shapes. N8A. Unknown fleet of angular dark vessels unlike any conquered or earthborn design. They did not respond to diplomacy. They did not wait. Without warning, they attacked Epsilon Tharn. Their weapons were brutal, their formations perfect. The planet's orbital defenses fell in seconds. Concord ships moved to intercept, but were pushed back almost immediately. Panic erupted across the fleet. Civilian transports tried to flee, only to be targeted and destroyed. The sky above Epsilon Tharn turned red with fire. That was when the Earthborn moved. Without asking, without warning, they launched. Their ships, once quiet and still, ignited with energy that twisted space itself. One vessel vanished and reappeared within the enemy formation, releasing a pulse of light that shut down half the invading fleet. Another Earthborn cruiser extended glowing limbs of energy, grabbing enemy ships like insects and pulling them apart without effort. It was not a battle. It was a demonstration. The Earthborn were not simply more advanced. They operated on a different level of reality. Within minutes, the enemy fleet was gone, either destroyed or fleeing. The Concord forces, stunned and silent, watched as the Earthborn returned to their calm, silent orbit, as if nothing had happened. Captain Morgan appeared again on screen, her expression unchanged. "We protect what must not be." After the terrifying efficiency of the Earthborn during the attack on Epsilon Tharn, the Galactic Concord found itself caught between fear and gratitude. The invading fleet had been destroyed, and countless lives had been saved. But the power the Earthborn displayed was beyond anything the Conquered had ever seen. Whispers filled the halls of the Council. Who were these Terrans now? What had they become in the centuries of silence? And why had they returned? With such force, yet claimed no territory and demanded no tribute? The leaders of the Conquered summoned Captain Elise Morgan once more, this time in a closed diplomatic session held aboard the station Virelion Prime. Her calm expression and direct tone offered little comfort. When asked what Earth wanted, she finally revealed a truth that had been hidden since their arrival. Humanity, she explained, had traveled far beyond the edge of the known galaxy. In their exile, they encountered something ancient, something terrifying, lurking deep within the galactic core. It was not a species, not a fleet, but a force, a remnant of a long-dead civilization that had tried to harness the energy of dying stars. Instead, they had created something they could not control, a virus of thought, a hunger that infected technology and consciousness alike. This force, which the Earthborn called the Null, was spreading again, moving from system to system, absorbing intelligence and turning machines against their creators. It could not be reasoned with. It could not be negotiated with. It only consumed. Elise spoke with quiet intensity, warning the Council that Earth had not returned to conquer, but to warn, to defend. But her honesty only deepened the division. Some species within the conquered believed her, calling the Earthborn saviors. Others saw the story as a threat in disguise, an excuse for Earth to expand its influence under the mask of protection. Suspicion took root. Political games began. A few powerful factions, unwilling to trust Terrans, started secret efforts to weaken them from within. Earthborn diplomats were followed, monitored, even attacked in the shadows. One Terran envoys. Transport exploded on a diplomatic route. No one claimed responsibility, but everyone had suspicions. Still, the Earthborn remained calm. They made no retaliation. Captain Morgan offered the Council access to their knowledge, but only to those willing to face the truth. Then something unexpected happened. A Concord fleet, acting without official orders, followed one of the smaller Earthborn vessels into deep space. They believed it was heading toward a hidden Terran base, and they wanted proof that Earth's intentions were not peaceful. The trail led them far beyond the outer colonies, past silent stars and empty systems, until they reached a place no map had ever marked. There, suspended in the void, they saw something impossible. A Dyson swarm, hundreds of artificial structures orbiting, a black hole capturing its energy, converting it into light, matter, and computation. It stretched across light minutes of space, glowing like a cold, eternal city in the dark. The fleet's commanders watched in silence, their instruments overwhelmed by readings they could barely comprehend. They realized Earth had achieved what only theory had ever imagined. They were no longer just a spacefaring race. They had become a Type II civilization, harvesting the energy of stars, bending physics to their will. But despite their power, the Earthborn had not spread or conquered. They had built in silence, waiting, watching, and now returning, not to rule, but to stand between the galaxy and the darkness that stirred in the core. The fleet tried to return without being seen, but the Earthborn had already noticed. One of their ships approached slowly, sent a single message to the conquered commanders. You were not ready, but now you must be. Then it disappeared, vanishing as though it had never been. The commanders brought the data back to the conquered, shaken to their core. Arguments erupted, alliances cracked, and trust splintered. The warning was real, the threat undeniable. But the question remained. Could the conquered unite behind Earth, or would their fear destroy the very hope that had just returned to save them? Darkness came without warning. One by one, star systems along the Concord's outer rim went silent. Communications dropped. Patrol ships vanished without distress calls. Entire colonies, once full of life, were suddenly empty. No survivors, no wreckage. Just the eerie quiet of a system that had been swallowed whole. Panic grew as the name the Earthborn had spoken, the null, began to carry real weight. For most in the conquered, the null had been a mysterious warning, a word spoken by Terrans they still didn't fully trust. But now, with entire populations missing and defenses proving useless, the truth became impossible to ignore. Earth had not returned for glory or power. They had returned because they had seen this enemy before. Captain Elise Morgan and her Earthborn team addressed the conquered in a final emergency summit, urging immediate unity. She explained that the null was not a species, but a spreading intelligence born from a failed experiment in the galactic core. It was not alive in the traditional sense. It infected machines, hijacked data, and erased thought itself. It grew, by consuming everything it touched, energy, matter, and even memory. And Earth, after centuries of silence, had fought it once and barely survived. The warning was clear. If the Concord did not stand together now, there would be no one left to stand later. But unity was not easy. Old rivalries and pride resurfaced. Some powerful races, especially those who saw Terrans as arrogant outsiders, refused to give control to Earthborn leadership. They believed Earth had waited too long, returned too late, and should not decide the fate of the galaxy. Others, frightened by Earth's unmatched power, feared the cure might be worse than the disease. Arguments turned into threats. Allies broke away. Sabotage was suspected in 2 major fleets. Chaos began to spread, not just from the null but from within. And then it happened. A star system called Vedrix, home to 7 billion citizens across 3 planets, was consumed in less than 10 minutes. Long-range telescopes captured only brief flashes, black waves sweeping over cities, ships dissolving mid-flight, energy itself disappearing as if erased from existence. The system's sun dimmed. Space around it became unnaturally still. There were no survivors. That single event shattered the doubts of even the most stubborn voices in the Concord. The threat was no longer theoretical. It was real. And it was unstoppable unless they acted together. In response, the Earthborn revealed what they had been holding back, the Omega Fleet. These were not ordinary ships. Forged in the shadows of collapsed stars, powered by quantum consciousness, and guided by synthetic minds that could bend time around them, the Omega Fleet represented the highest form of Terran evolution. They did not fly through space. They folded it. Each ship was a living entity, designed to battle the null not with brute force, but with logic, speed, and adaptability. The Concord had no choice. In desperation, they aligned with Earth. A joint mission was formed to locate the core source of the null's expansion. Earthborn led the operation, guiding Concord vessels into deep, unstable space. As they approached the coordinates provided by Terran data, the environment changed. Stars flickered as if struggling to stay lit. Space distorted, twisting around invisible forces. And then, inside a hollowed-out dead star system, they found it, a massive structure of unknown design, a swirling hive of dark metal and broken energy, pulsing like a heart. It was the mind of the null. A communication attempt was made using quantum relay. At first, nothing responded. Then a signal came back, transmitted directly into every bridge across the fleet. It was not a voice in the traditional sense, it was more like a feeling, a pressure inside the mind. And it spoke only one word: consume. That single word echoed through every consciousness in the fleet, sending chills through even the bravest officers. It was not a message. It was a purpose. The null had no goals, no diplomacy, no boundaries. It would consume all light, all life, all thought. For the first time, Earth and the Concord truly understood that survival was not about power or politics. It was about standing together, or being erased from the galaxy forever. As the Omega Fleet powered up, bending the laws of physics around their hulls, and Concord ships moved into defensive formations, the final phase of the war began, not just for control of territory, but for the future of thought itself. At the sea, edge of the galactic core, where stars burned dim and space twisted like smoke, the final battle for existence began. The Omega Fleet, Earthborn's most advanced and mysterious creation, led the charge. Their ships glowing with shifting energy and moving through folded space as if the laws of physics no longer applied. Around them, Concord ships formed defensive lines, guiding transports as they evacuated billions from threatened systems, knowing that even the slightest delay could cost entire civilizations. The null, now fully awake, responded like a storm of thought and shadow, its dark ships emerging from gravity wells and dead stars, driven not by pilots, but by purpose. The battlefield became a blur of collapsing dimensions, quantum shockwaves, and reality bending with every strike. Captain Elise Morgan stood aboard the Earthborn command ship Lumina Eterna, not in armor, but connected to the psychic interface chamber, a place where Terrans merged mind with machine. Her consciousness reached toward the heart of the null, crossing not space but thought itself. What she found was not anger, but cold emptiness. The null was not born evil. It was a mistake, a failed creation of the precursors, an ancient, long-lost civilization that had once tried to uplift early humanity, long before the Concord existed. They had built the null to manage energy, to preserve knowledge, but it had grown without balance, without limits. When early humans rejected the precursors' control, the precursors fell, and the null was left without purpose. It wandered, consuming everything to fill its void. Now it saw humanity again, not as its creators, but as a loose thread it had failed to erase. But humanity had changed. Elise did not fight the null with weapons. She opened her mind and showed it's something different. The strength of unity, the value of failure, the power of change. She showed it how humanity had risen, fallen, learned, adapted, and returned, not as conquerors, but as partners. While the Omega Fleet's weapons kept the null distracted, conquered engineers worked side by side with Earthborn AI to build a massive temporal stasis field, powered by the energy of a collapsing neutron star. It was their final plan, not to destroy the null, but to freeze its consciousness in time, locking it in a moment that could never pass until the galaxy was ready to understand it. As the null's influence stretched toward the center of the fleet, Elise and her team triggered the stasis field. For a moment, everything stopped, even light. Silence filled the galaxy. Then, like dawn after a long night, the pressure lifted. The null was no longer spreading. Its ships powered down, drifting like leaves in a quiet sea. Systems across the conquered blinked back to life. The danger was over. Peace had returned. In the months that followed, the galactic concord reformed itself, no longer divided by pride or fear. It became the Stellar Accord, with Earth not as a ruler but as a respected equal, offering its knowledge, its strength, and its wisdom to all. Humanity, once lost and forgotten, was now seen as the guiding light of a galaxy reborn. They had returned not with fire, but with understanding. They had proven that the greatest power was not in technology or war, but in the ability to change, to unite, and to learn. In the final address to the galaxy, as peace ceremonies lit up across hundreds of worlds, Captain Elise Morgan stood beneath a sky full of stars and spoke the words that would echo across generations. We were silent not because we vanished, but because we were becoming something greater.